Okay, in this problem they describe a series of something going up and down. They don't give you a starting amount, but if you want a nice number just so it can be more concrete to start with, let's just say it was worth 100. Just 100 is really nice to work with when it comes to percents. So let's say our starting point is 100. Point, I guess they call it, right, if on the stock market. So started out at 100 points. I realize the scale that actually doesn't really even probably make sense for the Dow Jones Industrial Average, but we're just picking any number because it won't matter at the end. We just want the percent off it, and it's easier to deal with percents with 100. Okay, so on Monday it went down by 3.2%. So all of these are going to hinge on that same thing we talked about, is that if it was worth 100% of its value and it went down by 3.2%, the number we actually want to use is the, 96.8? If we subtract 3.2? That it has 96.8% of its value left. So we'll keep using that, what it's actually worth. Same thing, if something goes up by 11.2%, it's worth as much as it used to be, plus another 11.2%. And so it's now worth 111.2% of what it used to be. So if we keep using these actual percentages, it will shorten it because everything doesn't become like a two-step problem then. You don't have to figure out, well, what's 3.2% of this and then subtract it off. You can do it all at once. Okay, so it looks like it started at 100 points. And then on Monday, it went down by 3.2, which means out of that 100, it retained 96 point, and right, I'm just subtracting these all from 100. You can kind of, oops. Come over here to check on yourself if you want to. Oops. There. So it retained 96.8% of its value. But then if we're dealing with percents, we always want to use the decimal version. So 96.8% is the same as 0.968. So we want to do 100 times 0.968, which looks like 96.8 on this one. And you can check on that. This one will work out really nicely just because we started at 100. So now it's worth, oops. Keeps hitting the button too many times. Now it's worth 96.8 points instead of 100 points because it went down by a little. Excuse me. So now it's worth this amount. And I was, specifically, probably you don't need me to type that in the calculator. I'm doing it to get myself ready for the next one, so I have that number in there. So then what happened on Tuesday? Well, Tuesday, it started off being worth 96.8 points from the previous part, and then it went up by 11.2%. So if it goes up, it's now worth 111.2% of what it used to be. And if I want that as a decimal, picture I have to move it twice. So that's 1.112. So 111.2%. So if I come over here and say, well, yesterday's worth times 111.2% as a decimal, it's now worth 107.6416. Okay, so then what happened on Wednesday? It went up by 0.7%. So Wednesday, you get the worth from yesterday, 107.6416. And if something goes up by 0.7%, it's now worth 100.7% of what it used to be. And so as a decimal, that's 1.007. So yesterday's worth times 100.7% as a decimal. So at the end of that day, it was worth 108. And we'll round somewhere just so we don't have to write so many. Okay, so then on Thursday, it went down by 4.8%. So it started off being worth this 108 number. And if something goes down by 9.4%, well, how much of it is left? So what's 100% minus 9.4% is 90.6%. But then we want 90.6% as a decimal, so if I move the decimal twice, it's 0.906. So I'll come over here and we'll do yesterday's worth times. Now it's only worth about 90% of what it was because it went down by almost 10%. And so at the end of that day, it was 98.20595. Notice I don't have to type these all because I keep the number in the calculator. And so I'm not losing any decimals by deciding how many to write down because it's storing them all over here. And I can just round it my answer at the end. Okay, so then on Friday, what happened? Well, it started out being worth this 98.20 or 21 if I'm rounding. And oh, did I mess up my days? I'm trying to read this off the lines here. This is probably a good example of how to fix when you make an error and a really good reason to write down your work so I don't have to scrap everything. I just mixed up Thursday and Friday here. It went down by 4.8% actually. So down by 4.8%. See how since I wrote my work, I only have to erase that part where I wrote down the wrong number? Okay, so if it went down by 4.8%, there's what, 95.2% left? So 100% minus 4.8%. And so if there's 95.2% of it left, and I could even go here on the calculator and back up one and delete that row. So it started out being worth the 108 number, and then it lost 4%, so you were left with 95-ish%. So now it's worth 103 points. Okay, so then finally Friday, it started out being worth 103-ish points, and it went down by 9.4, which leaves you with 90.6% left out of 100. And so if I make that a decimal, I just usually, like, I don't know, you guys, I just kind of picture, like, it's normally here for 90.6%. So if I move it twice, it's 0.906. And so yesterday's worth times 0.906. Okay, so at the end of the week, it was worth 93,492, we'll call it this. Okay, so we started at 100, and we ended at 93.492. So what was our change? Well, it looks like it went down by 6.5. And it looks like to the nearest tenth, so 6.5 is accurate enough. So it went down by 6.5. Now, does that necessarily mean 6.5%? Well, it depends. In general, no, but since we started at 100, then it does. So the net result is that it decreased by 6.5%. So just kind of doing that increase-decrease thing 5 times in a row. And that's especially a time where having that actual percentage, so a decrease, subtract from 100, an increase, add to 100%, really speeds it up. Because if all of these were a 2-step process, then it would definitely take a lot longer since we had to do 5 in a row.